Welcome, Ion. Are you come from your native city of Ephesus?
No, Socrates, but from Epidaurus, where I attended the festival of Asclepius.
And do the Epidaurians have contests of rhapsodes at the festival?
Oh yes, and all sorts of musical performers.
And were you one of the competitors, and did you succeed?
I obtained the first prize of all, Socrates.
Well done. I often envy the profession of a rhapsode, Ion, for you have always to wear fine clothes, and to look as beautiful as you can is a part of your art. Then again, you are obliged to be continually in the company of many good poets, and especially of Homer, who is the best and most divine of them. And to understand him, and not merely learn his words by rote, is a thing greatly to be envied. And no man can be a rhapsode who does not understand the meaning of the poet. For the rhapsode ought to interpret the mind of the poet to his hearers. But how can he interpret him well, unless he knows what he means?
Very true, Socrates. Interpretation has certainly been the most laborious part of my art, and I believe myself able to speak about Homer better than any man. No one who ever was has as good ideas about Homer as I have, or as many.
I am glad to hear you say so, Ion. I say that you will not refuse to acquaint me with them.
Oh, certainly, Socrates, and you really ought to hear how exquisitely I render Homer. I think that the Homeridae should give me a golden crown.
I shall take an opportunity of hearing your embellishments at some other time. But just now, I should like to ask you a question. How did you come to have this skill about Homer only and not about Hesiod or the other poets? Does not Homer speak of the same themes which all other poets handle? Is not war his great argument? And does he not speak of human society and of intercourse of men, good and bad, skilled and unskilled, and of the gods conversing with one another and with mankind, and about what happens in heaven and in the world below, and the generations of gods and heroes? Are not these the themes of which Homer sings?
Very true, Socrates.
And do not the other poets sing of the same?
Yes, Socrates, but not in the same way as Homer.
What, in a worse way?
Oh, yes, in a far worse way.
And Homer in a better way?
He is incomparably better. Why, Socrates, do I lose attention and go to sleep and have absolutely no ideas of the least value when anyone speaks of any other poet? But when Homer is mentioned, I wake up at once and am all attention and have plenty to say.
The gift which you possessed of speaking excellently about Homer is not an art, but an inspiration. There is divinity moving you, like that contained in the stone which Euripides calls a magnet. This stone not only attracts iron rings, but also imparts to them a similar power of attracting other rings suspended from one another, so as to form quite a long chain. And all of them derive their power of suspension from the original stone. In like manner, the muse, first of all, inspires men herself. And from these inspired persons, a chain of other persons is suspended who take the inspiration. For all good poets, epic as well as lyric, compose their beautiful poems not by art, but because they are inspired and possessed. The poet is a light and winged and holy thing, and there is no invention in him until he has been inspired and is out of his senses, and the mind is no longer in him. When he has not attained to this state, he is powerless and is unable to utter his oracles.
Indeed, Socrates, I am persuaded that good poets, by a divine inspiration, interpret the things of the gods to us.
And you, rhapsodists, are the interpreters of the poets.
There again, you are right.
Then you are the interpreters of interpreters.
Precisely.
When you produce the great effect upon the audience in the recitation of some striking passage, such as the apparition of Odysseus leaping forth on the floor, recognized by the suitors, and casting his arrows at his feet, or the description of Achilles rushing at Hector, or the sorrows of Andromache, Hecuba, or Priam. Are you in your right mind? Are you not carried out of yourself? And does not your soul, in an ecstasy, seem to be among the persons or places of which you are speaking, whether they are in Ithaca or in Troy or whatever may be the scene of the poem.
That proof strikes home to me, Socrates, for I must frankly confess that at the tale of pity, my eyes are filled with tears, and when I speak of horrors, my hair stands on end and my heart throbs.
Well, Ion, and what are we to say of the man who at a sacrifice or festival appears weeping or panic-stricken in the presence of more than 20,000 friendly faces? Is he in his right mind, or is he not?
No, indeed, Socrates. I must say that strictly speaking, he is not in his right mind.
And are you aware that you produce similar effects on most spectators?
Oh, only too well. For when I look down from the stage and behold the various emotions of pity, wonder, sternness stamped upon their countenances when I am speaking, and I am obliged to give my very best attention to them, for if I make them cry, I myself shall laugh, and if I make them laugh, I myself shall cry when the time of payment comes.
Do you know that the spectator is the last of the rings which receive the power of the original magnet from one another? The rhapsode, like yourself, and the actor are intermediate links, and the poet himself is the first of them. Through all these, the god sways the souls of men in any direction which he pleases, and makes one hang down from another. Thus, there is a vast chain of dancers and masters and undermasters of choruses who are suspended, as if from the stone, at the side of the rings which hang down from the muse. And every poet has some muse from whom he is suspended, and by whom he is said to be possessed. And the greater number are possessed and held by Homer, of whom, Ion, you are one, and are possessed by Homer, and when anyone repeats the words of another poet, you go to sleep, and know not what to say. But when anyone recites a strain of Homer, you wake up in a moment, and your soul leaps within you, and you have plenty to say. For not by art or knowledge about Homer do you say what you say, but by divine inspiration and by possession. And you, Ion, when the name of Homer is mentioned, have plenty to say, and have nothing to say of others. You ask, why is this? The answer is that you praise Homer not by art, but by divine inspiration.
That is good, Socrates, and yet I doubt whether you will ever have eloquence enough to persuade me that I praise Homer only when I am mad and possessed. And if you could hear me speak of him, I am sure you would never think this to be the case.
And what part of Homer do you speak well? Surely not about every part.
There is no part, Socrates, about which I do not speak well, of that I can assure you.
Surely not about things in Homer of which you have no knowledge.
And what is there in Homer of which I have no knowledge?
Why does not Homer speak in many passages about arts? For example, about driving. If I can only remember the lines, I will repeat them.
I remember. I will repeat them.
Tell me then, what Nestor says to Antilochus his son, where he bids him be careful at the turn in the horse race in honor of Patroclus.
He says, "Bend gently in the polished chariot to the left of them, and urge the right on the right hand with whip and voice, and slacken the rein. And when you are at the goal..."
Sure, now, Ion. Will the charioteer or the physician be the better judge of the propriety of these lines?
The charioteer, clearly.
And will the reason be that this is his art? Or will there be another reason?
No, that will be the reason.
Then, which will be a better judge of the lines which you were reciting from Homer? You or the charioteer?
The charioteer.
Why, yes, because you are a rhapsode and not a charioteer.
Yes.
And the art of the rhapsode is different from that of the charioteer.
Yes.
And if a different knowledge, then a knowledge of different matters.
True.
Then, upon your own showing, the rhapsode and the art of the rhapsode will not know everything.
I should exclude certain things, Socrates.
Which things will the rhapsode know?
He will know what a man and what a woman ought to say, and what a freeman and what a slave ought to say, and what a ruler and what a subject.
Do you mean that a rhapsode will know better than the pilot what the ruler of a sea-tossed vessel ought to say?
No, the pilot will know best.
Or will the rhapsode know better than the physician what the ruler of a sick man ought to say?
He will not?
But he will know what a slave ought to say.
Yes.
Suppose the slave to be a cowherd, The rhapsode will know better than the cowherd what he ought to say in order to soothe the infuriated cows.
No, he will not.
But he will know what a spinning woman ought to say about the working of wool.
No.
At any rate, he will know what a general ought to say when exhorting his soldiers.
Yes, that is the sort of thing of which the rhapsode will be sure. Yes, that is the sort of thing of which the rhapsode will be sure to know.
But is the art of the rhapsode the art of the general?
I am sure that I know what a general ought to say.
Why, yes, I am, because you may possibly have a knowledge of the art of the general as well as of the rhapsode.
Yes.
And in judging of the general's art, do you judge of it as a general or as a rhapsode?
To me, there appears to be no difference between them.
What do you mean? Do you mean to say that the art of the rhapsode and of the general is the same?
Yes, one and the same.
Then he who is a good rhapsode is also a good general.
Certainly, Socrates.
And he who is a good general is also a good rhapsode?
No, I did not say that.
But you do say that he who is a good rhapsode is also a good general.
Certainly.
And you are the best of Hellenic rhapsodes.
Far the best, Socrates.
And are you the best general, Ion?
To be sure, Socrates, and Homer was my master.
Then, Ion, what in the name of goodness can be the reason why you, who are the best of generals as well as the best of rhapsodes in all Hellas, go about as a rhapsode when you might be a general?
Why, Socrates? The reason is that my countrymen, the Ephesians, are the servants and
Best of Hellenic rhapsodes.
far the best, Socrates.
And are you the best general, Ion?
Be sure, Socrates, and Homer was my master.
Then, Ion, what in the name of goodness can be the reason why you, who are the best of generals as well as the best of rhapsodes in all Hellas, go about as a rhapsode when you might be a general?
Why, Socrates? The reason is that my countrymen, the Ephesians, are the servants and soldiers of Athens and do not need a general, and you and Sparta are not likely to have me, for you think you have enough generals of your own.